The Architecture of Belonging Chapter 1. The warmth of a soft memory in the Omegaverse. Bonds are said to be forged in closeness, but my life began with a quiet distance. My twin brother, Ezra, and I were both Omegas born into a prosperous family. Shortly after our birth, Ezra was diagnosed with a delicate heart condition. Required to navigate endless hospital visits and constant medical monitoring, our parents made a painful choice: to give me to my maternal grandparents so I could receive undisturbed, undivided care. My grandparents' house was filled with the scent of old books, dried lavender, and soft sunlight. They showered me with unconditional love, making sure I never felt second best. And then there was Aiden. Aiden lived next door. An alpha 2 years older than me, he possessed a calm, steady presence that grounded everything around him. While other alphas his age were boisterous and territorial, Aiden moved with a quiet, deliberate, gentle nature. His parents treated me like their own, and Aiden instinctively took it upon himself to be my guardian. He noticed every small detail about me that others overlooked. The way I favored sitting on the sunlit edge of the porch, how I hid my hands in my sleeves when I was nervous, and, above all, my deep love for chocolates and sweets. Whenever he returned from a trip into town or earned a bit of pocket money, he would find me sitting by the garden fence, reach through the wooden slats, and slip a neatly wrapped treat into my palm with a quiet, knowing smile. On days when a sudden fever left me weak and trembling, Aiden never left my side. While my grandparents moved about anxiously, Aiden would pull a chair right up to my bedside. He'd dip a cloth into cool water, wring it out with careful precision, and gently rest it against my forehead. When my fever made me restless, he would softly speak to me about the birds nesting in the garden or the blueprints he'd seen in books. His low alpha voice instantly soothing my senses until my breathing steadied and sleep claimed me. As the years drifted by, my childhood fondness for Aiden naturally bloomed into my very first crush. A sweet, silent adoration rooted in years of absolute safety and tenderness. My biological parents and Ezra visited whenever their busy business schedules permitted. They always brought me expensive, precious gifts. Imported toys, designer clothes, and intricate gadgets. I knew in my heart that they loved me, but an undeniable fog of awkwardness hung between us. They didn't know my favorite meals, my tiny habits, or the sound of my laugh when I was truly happy. Aiden, however, knew the exact ratio of sugar I liked in my morning tea without ever asking. When high school ended, my grandparents took me on a quiet trip to a remote mountain village to visit old friends. It was a serene vacation, but on our way back, tragedy struck. Our car skidded on a sharp curve. When I woke up 4 days later from a coma with a broken left arm and a cast on my right leg, the world had shattered. My grandparents were gone, their funeral already conducted by my parents while I lay unconscious in an intensive care unit. The realization that I never got to say a final goodbye broke something fundamental inside me. My parents brought me back to their sprawling mansion. Out of fear of triggering my deep depression, they packed away everything that belonged to my grandparents and forbade me from returning to their home. They treated me with delicate care, but my smile died in that hospital room. In the sudden transition, I lost all contact with Aiden and my old neighborhood. Isolated in a gilded cage, I retreated into myself. Chapter 2. Parallel Lines. Life at the mansion was polite, cold, and quiet. During holidays, our home was often visited by Aaron and Alan, two handsome alpha brothers and sons of my parents' close business partners. They were childhood friends of Ezra. Aaron, the elder, was studying for his master's in business. Alan, a second-year bachelor student, was a star college athlete. Both were gentle and kind to me. Whenever they visited, they would ask how I was doing with genuine courtesy, but their eyes always drifted back toward my brother. Ezra was a sweet, breathtakingly lovely Omega. Though we shared the same face, Ezra possessed a soft, radiant grace and a melodious voice that made everyone fall in love with him instantly. I loved my brother dearly, yet an invisible wall remained between us. A wall built from years of separate lives and different worlds. When college started, we all ended up on the same campus. Ezra pursued music, while I chose architecture. My passion for architecture stemmed from a memory I held tightly. As a child, watching classmates with their parents on school functions, I used to feel a quiet ache of jealousy for complete families. On my walk to school, I'd look into humble little houses along the lane and see parents sending their children off with warm embraces. They didn't have much money, but they had a home filled with genuine warmth. I wanted to design homes like that, spaces where people felt safe, blessed, and truly loved. My parents tried their best, but they could not buy back the lost years. They didn't know my basic likes, my preferences, or my severe allergies. They would attempt to cook for me during family gatherings, only to serve meals containing ingredients my body couldn't handle, forcing me to quietly decline eating altogether. When Ezra, Aaron, and Alan went out, my parents encouraged me to join them. But sitting among them, I felt like a ghost. They shared years of inside jokes, shared memories, and an easy familiarity that I couldn't touch. Chapter 3. An Empty Vow. After graduation, Aaron and Alan joined their family's company. Soon after, our parents arranged our marriages. Aaron with Ezra and Alan with me, Arlo. Aaron and Ezra were hopelessly in love. True lovebirds whose bright happiness lit up every room they entered. Alan and I, however, were married like polite strangers entering a business partnership. Still, I harbored a fragile hope. I thought, maybe now I can finally build my own family. Maybe the distance between us will fade. Didn't. Marriage changed nothing. Alan was polite, but he treated me like a quiet roommate rather than a spouse. Whenever I needed comfort, he was absent. When my heat arrived, instead of comforting me or sharing his scent to ease the excruciating pain, he was nowhere to be found, forcing me to rely entirely on harsh suppressants that left me drained and hollow. Yet, whenever he had free time, his instinct was to hang out with Ezra and Aaron, slipping effortlessly back into the comfortable trio of his youth. I was entirely alone. The breaking point arrived at a formal family gala. A child running through the hall bumped into a server holding a heavy glass punch bowl of red wine. The heavy glassware shattered against the tiled floor, spraying wine and sharp glass fragments toward Ezra and me. Instantly, the crowd swarmed around Ezra to check on him, gasping at the commotion. Alan rushed forward instantly, his eyes full of worry for my brother, checking Ezra's hands and clothes for any scratch. No one looked at me. No one noticed the sharp glass shards that had sliced deep into my hands as I tried to block the splash, or the red wine soaking my clothes. Bleeding silently, I walked out of the hall alone, bandaged my hands in the public restroom, and took a cab home through the dark streets. When Alan finally returned late that night, he glanced at me casually as I sat on the couch. "You came back early?" I didn't notice. "Wait, what happened to your hands?" "It's nothing," I said softly, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. He didn't push further, simply accepting my answer and walking into the bedroom. The next morning, as he adjusted his tie in front of the mirror to leave for the company, I looked at him with clear, tired eyes. "Can you come home early tonight? We need to talk." He paused, nodded, and said, "Yes, I will." He came home hours late. Chapter 4. Building a home. When Alan finally stepped through the door, finding me sitting in the quiet, dim living room, I didn't yell or shed a single tear. I simply handed him a document placed neatly on the table. It was a divorce agreement. "You don't love me, Alan?" I said gently, cutting off his startled protests before he could construct an excuse. "And I deserve to be loved by someone who sees me. You have lived in Ezra's orbit your whole life, and I will no longer live in the shadows." Realizing the quiet, unbreakable finality in my tone, Alan slowly signed the papers. The divorce was finalized quietly. I packed a single suitcase containing only what was mine, turning my back on the grand mansion, the corporate ties, and the family that never truly knew me. I went back to the only place where I had ever felt whole, my grandparents' old house in the mountain village. The house was dusty, the gates rusted, and the yard overgrown with moss and wild grass. But as I unlocked the front gate, the familiar scent of wild mountain flowers washed over me. For the first time in years, I took a deep, clear breath, feeling the heavy knot in my chest begin to loosen. "I thought I heard someone moving around here." A deep, warm voice spoke from behind me. I turned around. Standing by the wooden gate, taller, broader, but with the exact same tender, watchful eyes, was Aiden. Time seemed to freeze. Aiden's gaze scanned my face, taking in my presence, my pale frame, and the tired, weighted line of my shoulders. In an instant, his scent, warm cedar and rich, comforting dark chocolate, flared gently and wrapped around me like a thick, protective blanket, instantly silencing every lingering anxiety in my body. "You're back, Arlo?" Aiden whispered, his voice thick with uncontainable emotion. He didn't ask where I had been, why I had disappeared for years, or why I looked so weary and hurt. Instead, he stepped forward, reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small bar of my favorite artisanal chocolate, a habit he had never broken, carrying one every single day, and placed it gently into my open hand. "I never stopped waiting for you," he said softly, his thumbs brushing lightly over my knuckles. "I kept looking after your grandparents' garden, keeping the weeds away and watering the lavender, just in case you came home." Tears, held back for years through cold silence and neglect, finally spilled over my cheeks. Aiden pulled me into a solid, warm embrace, wrapping his arms securely around me and holding me tight against his chest, while I cried away the cold loneliness of my past. Epilogue. The blueprints of joy, months passed. With Aiden by my side, I renovated my grandparents' house, turning it into my very first real architectural masterpiece. We kept the warm wooden beams and old fireplace that held my childhood memories, adding large glass windows that let in the golden mountain sunlight and looked out over the thriving garden Aiden had kept alive for me. I opened a small architectural firm in the valley, designing modest, cozy, and vibrant homes for local families, putting love, warmth, and security into every wall I drafted. Every design was rooted in the safety Aiden had always given me. My parents and Ezra reached out, filled with regret after learning the full extent of my pain and Alan's neglect. I forgave them from a distance, establishing clear boundaries that protected my peace. They were part of my history, but Aiden was my present and my future. One chilly evening, as snow began to fall over the mountain pines, I sat by the roaring fireplace with a hot cup of cocoa. Aiden walked over and wrapped a soft wool blanket around my shoulders, sitting down beside me and kissing the top of my head while pulling me close to his side. "What are you drawing, Arlo?" he asked gently, looking down at the sketchpad resting on my lap. I looked down at the detailed blueprint of a nursery filled with warm light and cozy nooks, then smiled, leaning my head comfortably against his shoulder. "The house we're going to raise our family in," I whispered, turning my hand to interlock my fingers with his. "A place where no one ever feels forgotten." Aiden smiled softly, pressing a kiss against my forehead. "It's perfect, Arlo. Absolutely perfect."